the app, you can actually.
So, it is 5:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Do we need to do the roll call?
No, it's just for Amy to reflect who is attending the meeting.
And John is out today, so I will be looking for an approval of the December 13th meeting minutes.
I'll make an approval.
I'll second it.
Okay, are there any discussion or comments on that? Minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're on to item number 3, conflict of interest. Looking at the agenda, are there any items that anybody has a conflict with? Hearing none, we will move on to public comments. There is nobody from the public and no other comments have been sent in. So, we're going to jump to item number 5, the corp presentation. And we've got Blake.
Blake Thiessen from Architecture will
Yep,
be.
to do his report. So do you want to switch it over, or does he have to do that?
He has the ability to take control.
Yeah, I'll take screen share. Hey guys, I'm Blake. I know you've seen me in the room before. This is John. I was telling Justin one of the benefits of me doing this virtual is you get both of us tonight. So thanks for allowing us to join you via screen. So, oops, that's not the right button. Hang on. It's like my first timer here. Okay, what I want to do tonight is, you see our screen yet?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So what I'd like to do is walk through some of the highlights of the corp, and Justin is going to, if he hasn't already sent you the draft document. And once we get through some of the highlights, we can flip through the actual document, and I can show you the depth of content here as we go. So we'll jump right into it. For those of you who are new to a comprehensive outdoor rec plan process, some of the key takeaways here is you really need to do this or update the document every 5 years to maintain your eligibility for grant funding, as well as make sure you're proactively looking at the planning and upkeep of your existing system. And the document does account for all of your park and open space properties, whether it's active rec or conservation-based recreation. So we also go through all of the current policies that relate to outdoor recreation, whether it be park impact fee or development policies and with land development. The outcome is us giving you recommendations, both in terms of your overall system, so general recommendations, as well as site-specific recommendations for your next 5-year window. And as we've experienced, most times we give you a list of things to do that far exceeds your 5-year capital budget abilities. And so, again, having an updated corp allows you to be eligible for certain grant projects, whether it be from DNR or EPA, DOT, but having this document in place is critical for that. Any questions on those few parameters before I go on?
No?
No. All right, so our process, we start off generally perform a review of the pertinent documents that have been assembled in the past, and that starts with your last corp. We look at bike ped plan, we look at land development projects in the area, just so we have some background understanding of the community. As luck would have it, we've been fortunate enough to work with you guys on a number of projects in the past, of course. So we had a pretty good understanding of where things were at. That's followed by our in-field site analysis, where we tour all of your facilities and do an asset inventory. So all of your benches, your playgrounds, your parking lots, all of that that data gets collected, and then we'll show you how that gets portrayed back to you here in the document. A good corp should have an element of stakeholder input, and in this case we had both the public meeting, which of course you guys remember from, was that August or September, I think we had that? And then we also did the online survey, so those, both of those feedback loops are contained in the document. As we go through the public input and our field work, we will come back to you with the suggestions of how to remedy some of those issues, and sometimes that involves schematic concept diagrams or certainly idea generation. That gets back to city staff, and we start our feedback loop, in which this tonight is a continuation of that loop. So my hope is that you guys can take the next 2 weeks or so and review the full document and get us any comments or questions that you may have so that we can finalize the report and get it adopted here so you can move on. One of the last pieces that we need to assemble once we nail all the final recommendations is putting together our opinion of probable costs. So that allows Justin and his staff, as they put together their annual capital budget, to more accurately understand what is the financial implication of some of these recommendations. So along with the estimate of cost, we also give you some strategies to supplement capital budgets, so whether it be grants or public-private partnerships. And I think we've observed Marshfield implementing some of that very successfully over the years, certainly with the pool project. I know the stadium project had a strong element of private funding, so I think you guys have sort of figured that out on your own, which is great. The final piece of course, is the adoption and getting through your final reviews. We'll integrate those comments, and then it'll go to council for adoption. Okay, so some of the fun stuff here. As you may know, parks are designated in different classifications, and there's a hierarchy of size. So mini park is the smallest of the size, and of which you have 3 spaces in your system. Moving up into the next category would be neighborhood park, and it's important to know that each of these classifications has what's called a service area. So as you look here on the right, you can see these concentric circles around each of these spaces. And a mini park has a service area of a 1/4 mile. So that's these little orange ones. The neighborhood park jumps up to a 1/2 mile. And then your community parks have a full mile. And so that would be example here. So when you start to overlay that, you get a pretty good sense of the coverage of your recreation spaces across the community. And what that does for us that's really useful is it starts to identify some of the gaps. And pretty quickly, by using this tool, we can say, all right, well, do we need to assess what's happening in those spaces? Why are we seeing gaps in recreational facilities? Is it a problem, or is that demand covered by some other facility type? And in this case, this is mostly commercial and industrial space, so that doesn't give me too much pause. However, these 2 areas are certainly heavier residential, and so we know that there is at least a perception of demand for recreation amenities. Now, one of the outliers here is in this western quad. This is all university space and is recreation. However, none of those facilities are open to general public during most times. So when we start to develop our recommendations, this is one of the tools that we use to formulate some of your next 5-year strategy. And I guess, John, maybe we should talk about some of the successes from the last corp here and how that influenced some of our recommendations.
Yeah, so like Blake said, every corp is kind of an iteration of the previous one, and things that are developed in the previous one we carry over and see what's been accomplished from the last corp. And I know that the pool was a big accomplishment, and that was set in the previous corp, but try to accomplish that, what you have, which was a great success. And
Wenzel would be another one that was identified.
yeah, Wenzel, that was a big success. A beautiful park right downtown there. So in this iteration, we do have some recommendations. They're not quite those big ticket items like the pool in Wenzel, though those opportunities are still there. It's kind of on your end to determine, you know, what you want to accomplish with this iteration of the corp. But like we said, kind of identifying where we can make accomplishments in providing services is one of our big goals for this iteration here.
Yeah, so you know, we're really happy that you were able to chip away at those big nuggets from the last one, and I think we're taking the approach that your next 5 years, other than Brain maybe being the large capital project, to really focus on maintaining what you have and getting some of the playgrounds back up to speed. That's probably the biggest efficiency area that we saw in your system. But the good news is, overall, the system's in really good shape. Maybe Justin and Ben would disagree with that, but compared to some of the other facilities and communities that we work in, I think you guys are in pretty good condition. One of the pieces I wanted to highlight here are your network of trails. You've obviously been chipping away at this over the years, and network is pretty robust. We always feel that there's room to improve on the connectivity between your parks and housing, you know, density clusters, workplaces. But I think the bones of your system are in really good shape. Of course, asphalt does need to be maintained over long term, so that's one of the things that we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, we saw that in public comments as well about connectivity. Like we said, you know, there's a lot of great connectivity already, but can be enhanced as well. So something to chew on for the next 5 years and in the future.
Yep. Yeah, it's no surprise that trails are always really high in the public comment as being a priority in our park system. You know, the trails are a facility type that really any age, any ability can use, and so that's always a good thing to focus on. So as we move into some of our recommendations, the chapter 4, which of the report that this is found in, which starts off with some of our bigger picture recommendations. You know, I talked about the playground piece. It's always smart to make sure that they're getting routine inspections, whether it's equipment or the surfacing, to make sure that we're providing safe environments for our kids. Wayfinding is one that I think we can continue to work on, you know, signage, identifying the major parts within the facilities and signage within the community, directing people to those major facilities. The connectivity here that John mentioned, always want to look at. And then ADA access, you know, making sure that our playgrounds and our shelters and trail access points are all ADA compliant is really important. So as we start to get into some of the specific recommendations, we started off with 2 potential future changes, and they're both directly tied to that service area. I'll go back here. You know, again, we identified a gap on the west side and a gapping on the east side. We think there's some pretty, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but you know, low-hanging opportunities here. At Weber, you know, it's a great conservancy space, but I think with some minor work, there could be the potential to add a small day use area here with playground equipment and maybe some of the other amenities that are lacking in that western node of the city. And then with Connor, I think Justin, we had talked about this parcel in the public meeting as being a potential expansion opportunity for Connor. So something to investigate further here and you know, over the next 5 years. So I mentioned that each individual site has what we call an asset inventory, and this is where we go through and we list out all of the existing infrastructure, whether it's a park bench, a sign, drinking fountain, playground, etc. We assess its condition. Green is always good. When you start to see the red showing through, that means we need some attention. And then we'll give you specific issues for each of those items as to what we felt was deficient. And then at the bottom, we list out all the remedies, and ultimately we will populate this with our projected costs to implement those suggestions. I never run those photos, so the second page of those inventory sheets is always populated with imagery of some of the items and issues that we've observed. Anything more to add on that? No? Okay. Actually, real quick, so earlier I had talked about each of these classifications, so you'll see that each of these is color-coded to match with one of these category types. So it's really easy as you flip through the document to know when you're in the mini parks, when you're in the neighborhood parks, and when you're in community, etc. So next steps after tonight, again, we're going to get you the draft document for full review. And Justin and I talked, and I think we targeted the 26th, Justin, to get all comments back to us. And hopefully we can funnel it through you so that we're getting 8 different versions of comments. So we can get our document wrapped up and back to you guys for final adoption and then start focusing on implementation.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today, ideally, all comments, whether from the committee and staff, would then be forwarded to Blake, and then he can review those comments and suggestions for his final version, and then try to wrap it up a couple weeks after that. So ideally, about end of February, I'm guessing, Blake?
Well, actually, I think if you can get the document to us in 2 weeks, we will, assuming that it's not a wholesale red line, red pen draining document, we could probably get that turned around pretty quickly and back to you right away, 1st of February.
Okay, good.
So that's the overview of the document. I do have the full document here. I think Justin's going to get you the virtual or the digital copy. You'll see that it's a bifold layout. So it's meant to be opened as a book if you had it hard copy. Otherwise, it'll display on your screen like this. And you can kind of flip through. Obviously, there are still things that we're going to flesh out here with Justin and some of the nitty-gritty details. But I'll just flip through here real quick so you can see the full scope of the document. Go through goals and objectives, and as John mentioned, some of that spills over from your last version. Here's that summary of some of the pertinent documents. Okay, we have a little bit of summary of the public input process. Okay, chapter 2 is probably the least exciting because it's a lot of background demographic information, so we try to make it as graphically exciting as we can. But it does get into some pretty detailed background on the history of the community. Chapter 3, you recognize this block, hopefully. So we talk about your connectivity elements, your trails. We do also inventory some of the adjacent recreational spaces that you don't have control of, but we know your community residents utilize. So whether that's county or school spaces, they're all important to the end user. They don't really care who maintains those spaces, they just know they can use them. This table, as you get to it, keep in mind, so this table compares the Marshfield open space land holdings to some national data. And we always take this with a grain of salt because this is comparing you to Los Angeles and the Dallas and anyone across the country who chooses to submit data. And so there's really no great control over the comparison of community sizes. So it's one metric to look at in terms of, do you have enough open space for your size of community? And in this case, it is showing a positive result. So that's good.
Yeah, just, and then as we've said several times, we've kind of categorized it into mini park, neighborhood park, and community park. So this little table, it kind of looks at how much park acreage is dedicated per resident of the city, and it's showing that collectively, you guys are exceeding like the recommended allocation of acreage per person. But when you get a little bit more into the numbers, it looks like you're kind of a little bit deficient in mini park acreage, a little bit deficient in neighborhood park acreage, but doing really well in community park acreage. And that's all just data to take with you in the future. If ever there was an opportunity to implement new park acreage into the system, you kind of now know, well, what size park do we really need to put in, and where would that go? And that's what this table also kind of tells us.
Yeah, so the focus would really be on that smaller scale neighborhood type facility, which I think is supported also by the service area graphics that we talked about earlier. So chapter 4 focuses on all the recommendations. Here again, the general, the future we talked about already, and then we get into all of the specific individual sites. So here's a good example of a poor condition at Pickle Pond. You know, we said, hey, the parking lot has some issues that need to be addressed, so we rated that in poor condition. So as we start to prioritize, or Justin does over the next 5 years in capital planning, you know, you really can flip through this pretty quickly and find some of these weak flags, if you will, that are pointing you in the direction of change. So there's a lot of content, a lot of data here for you to pour over and enjoy. I'm just going to keep flipping through. So in general, there's a lot of green, some yellow, but a lot of green in your system. As I said before, it's in pretty good condition. So the final chapter again is implementation. It's where we tell you how to do what you need to do. We've listed a lot of different grants and funding opportunities. We talked about some alternate funding strategies, which you guys have already been engaged. And then we have our maps. And then all of the raw data from the survey is included in the appendix. So there's your, what is it, 100 and, yeah, just about 80 pages or so of data for you. So any questions on any of that content?
I have two.
Can we, yep, go ahead.
When you talk about the gaps and like the playgrounds and stuff, did you take into consideration the school playgrounds? Because oftentimes in our community, parents will just take kids to the school playgrounds. They're just open for the public to use.
Yeah, great question. So the service area mapping is only done with municipal-owned facilities, because in theory, Justin has no control over what the school does with any of their facilities. You know, one option is we could run a second set of analysis, including the school properties in that matrix. Now, we did look at the two east and west gaps, and the school facilities really didn't help that case, but I think overall it helps to strengthen the density of some of those overlapping concentric layers.
Okay, and then one more question. When you were looking at trails, you mentioned trails to work. Did you also look at trails to schools?
Yeah, great question. So the Safe Routes to School program is a really good program. In fact, I think years ago I was involved in your Safe Routes to School plan that was done maybe in 2008 or 9. So we could probably pull that mapping in. Great point, let me add that in, that later.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? I think we're good, Blake. So I think the next step is we got 2 weeks to get comments to Justin. Justin will forward them on to.
Yeah, I'll have nothing formal, like I won't have like a survey or a form, so read it. If you want to mark it up with a red pen and submit it to me or turn it in the office, fine too. If you want to just email me comments or thoughts, fine too. I'll summarize them and comprise them as best I can. There might be some glaring things that we all catch, like a typo or something. I'm not going to have him read that 75 times, so anything that's obvious, I'll comprise it and then submit it to Blake for insertion or his review for the final plan.
Okay, good. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Blake.
Okay, guys. Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great night.
Okay, good. I know we were moving along. We did get past public comment, but you did step in. Was there something you wanted to share?
No, I don't have a public comment. So Justin invited me to come to the meeting. I was applied applicant for the committee to fill the position, so we haven't met, but.
Okay.
A little backstory is Ally is not able to continue with her role on the committee. She hasn't been here too much. Her commitment with her job and her career, as well as her home and kids' sporting activities, has really kind of hampered her ability to commit. She feels guilty about not coming. I think she picked up gymnastic coaching at the middle school, and she's not a gymnastics coach, but they needed someone, and she said she would do it. So that's Ally's way of doing things. She'll always volunteer and help out. So we reached out to Chris. I know Chris applied for, was it Marshall Utilities Commission? It was a contested thing. He wasn't offered it. I reached out to Chris like, hey, if you're still interested in helping out in the community, we got an opening. So the mayor's now, I think, advertising or I don't know, looking for other candidates for that consideration. And if there's more, that's fine. But Chris is also interested in filling that role for Ally for the next 2 years. So I asked him to come tonight because of the corp and it was being presented and kind of give an idea of what our meeting is like. So thanks, Chris, for coming.
All right, awesome. All right, then we will be on to item number 6, the cemetery burial rate increase.
Okay, the city contracts with the Marshfield Catholic Cemetery Association and the Emmanuel Lutheran Cemetery Association to perform their burial at a discounted rate. Each January, the rate increases depending on the consumer price index. And the rate increase for 2024 is 2.9%. So a traditional casket burial, ground burial would go from $398 to $410. A cremation burial, $121 to $125. And for a niche above ground cremation, goes from $78 actually to $80. I had a typo there. It says 84, but it's actually 80. So we're just looking for approval to implement this increase for 2024.
Seems pretty straightforward. You want to make a motion, any comments?
No, I have no comments, but I'll make a motion to approve the cemetery burial rate increase.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, are there any comments on that? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Amy. All right, we'll move on to the Vandahay water rule update.
I wrote up a little memo that apparently didn't make it. Sorry. So there's really big, like probably almost 10 feet tall postings of rules at Vandahay Waters on 2 places on the building. And the rules are fine. However, the Department of Trade, Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection changed minimums for children allowed at the pool. So they have to be, our current rule is that they have to be 10 years old to be there by themselves, and they've now changed it to 12. And then another thing they're requiring of pools is to have somewhere posted that no breath-holding games are allowed. Apparently that's a thing. They want it to be a visual posting somewhere. So with those 2 things, I took it upon myself to just kind of review all the rules and the whole entire board, and I just kind of condensed things, cleaned it up a little bit, added those two things in. So I put it in here 3 times, but it was the original rules, the original with the changes, and then the third page is just the final copy of what I'm asking for approval on. Yeah, so 2 things are required, and the rest is just,
I did have a question, because I looked through these and I got the pretty version.
okay.
Item 12, we're listing what's prohibited, and I didn't see anything about weapons. Is that needed?
I wish it was
can
possible,
bring
but
guns to the
apparently
pool. I
it's
just wanna
not
know, can I-
allowed to post
Yeah,
that.
we can bring guns to the pool.
Oh, great.
I mean, I'm not trying to say that, like, we see it or we
You
deal
know, we
with
see a lot
it.
of young kids there, and that's the right place. I mean, not to be too political, but we can't outlaw that?
Our committee cannot, it'd be a council decision because they regulate where guns are allowed. I believe the only location guns are allowed is the City Hall building. They're not allowed in this building, Wildwood Station or Oak Avenue, because they're polling locations. So guns are not, by federal law, weapons are not allowed in polling locations. So because there's elections at those, or voting at those locations, guns are not allowed. But they are allowed, I believe they're not allowed also at the library. So, but they are allowed at City Hall as well as any park or any park building and I guess the pool. And that was asked last year or the year before, and we have nothing prohibiting weapons. So you could bring your gun with your swimsuit and toys to the pool if you wanted
To
to.
answer any additional questions, there has been somebody that's brought, maybe not a gun, I think it was a knife last year, and staff was wondering if they were able to tell them to not bring it in, and I was like, nope. So I really did actually look and
So-
talk about it already, and I don't agree with it at all in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form, so
Right.
anyone wants to help make that change, that'd be great, but it
Well-
is actually, has been an issue at least once.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be reasonable to bring it up to council and just to say, this place is staffed by teenagers.
Right.
You know, to ask a teenager to handle a knife,
And at one point in time, they were like afraid to go to their cars because there was someone
yeah,
that
you
they knew
know,
was, I think it actually was maybe a gun in the parking lot. They were just walking through the parking lot with it.
you know,
So they didn't
just,
want to go to their cars. I'm like, that is totally reasonable.
right.
Mhm.
I mean, it's something to bring up and just to say that this.
I don't think that, does it come from me or does that come from the committee?
It would probably come from a recommendation from the committee.
Okay.
That's typically how a policy or our rules or procedures are handled, is by this group as ones who would voice their opinion. We took an item up a couple of years ago called smoking in parks.
Mhm.
And that came up by the committee, and they said, we want to talk about smoking in parks and prohibiting it near playgrounds or athletic areas. And we actually, I think, made a recommendation to ban smoking throughout all parks. You couldn't smoke in a park. The council heard the recommendation and eventually denied it. So we can still smoke in parks. But we have signage saying we prefer not to smoke near playgrounds or athletic events, but there's nothing prohibiting them from
Well,
doing it.
you're attempting to prohibit alcohol, tobacco.
Right, yeah, that's what I
So,
was
you know,
looking at.
vapes right here.
That might be, that might be construed as a controlled environment with alcohol and tobacco, because there's no smoking allowed in like restaurants or those types of things. There's no smoking
Okay.
allowed in our buildings.
There's food. Oh,
So
okay.
that, but like, if you're standing in the park, you could have, I guess, a smoke or alcohol. So, yeah, I personally wouldn't want to take up the weapons because it is kind of a political discussion that gets heated one way or another. And I don't, it'd be nice.
Can we
if
pay
this-
staff more if there's weapons involved? You know, maybe their kids get an extra $5 if a gun's on site?
If this committee would like to pursue that, then we just need a little direction of maybe surveying other communities to see what they do for weapons or specifically guns, and then putting together a proposal. And maybe it's just written into these rules, and these rules are tabled for tonight with the consideration. But that's your guys' liberty to make that decision.
I mean, I would say that even the situations that Amanda's brought up are quite concerning when we're talking about the fact that you have teenagers running a facility.
Right.
You know, so I just
And
think that.
young teens, too.
Young teens running a facility, you know, that's to give them absolutely no authority to say, hey, you can't have a knife here. That's ridiculous.
Right.
So, I mean, I would say that to, look at other communities, what are their rules, ask our lawyer, what can we prohibit, and just say, it's because of the environment, this work environment, and it has come up. This isn't hypothetical. I mean, I think that's reasonable.
As for the individual with the gun, that individual was walking through the parking lot, so we wouldn't have prohibited that or.
Sure.
But it was alarming to our staff to have to deal with it, but it's just one more thing that they have to deal with.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I don't think anyone wants to touch any Second Amendment type of talk here at all, but I'm just thinking about, in a place that's mostly children run by, I'm going to call them children. It seems a little silly that, we're going to say you can't vape in there, but you're welcome to bring your gun. So.
That's what the rules currently state,
Yeah. I don't know.
Are we able to touch base with other areas, other pools to find out what they do? And then bring it back?
That might be a good starting
After a-
point is,
I know we've done that before in the
It's been
past.
done for most of,
Yeah.
I mean, most of these rules were done by you guys before I even started. but
Right.
The changes I needed to make or whatever.
yeah, I think about precedents and saying, well, if Merrill and Walls Point are doing this, maybe that's something that we can look at too.
Should we bring it back?
Yeah.
That-
Would that be okay with you guys? Just-
Outside of that one particular
Sure.
item, is there other things that we should revisit or
No.
get more clarity on?
Everything looks good.
For the next
issue with
meeting?
that is I'm not gonna request to have these printed
I
yet
wouldn't,
then,
yeah.
and that just delays it a whole other month before,
Right, but if you have them printed and then
yeah.
we add the weapons.
to tape on
Then
the-
you have to reprint them anyway, so it's probably best to delay it for a little bit.
Is that an action then that we need, or a motion we need to make that says, go back and talk, or is that just a conversation?
If you want to do a motion that just says, want more clarification on weapons in the pool, we could bring that back.
I mean, would it be, we're moving to table this until we get more information?
Specifically on weapons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, always just do a separate sign for weapons too.
Yeah, I think we would have to do a separate sign for weapons, just because it's,
These, we could go to print and not put it on the big board.
yeah, the challenge always is like when you say it wasn't on the rules, and you're like, okay, there's the rules, like, but there's an additional rule.
Well, I guess I'm
There's
just
three more in the
thinking
locker room, and there's one more on the front door, and then there's two by concessions.
There's
So if we have
That-
one-
That's why I was gonna do this whole thing anyway. I was originally just gonna add the breath holding, and then I learned about the 12-year-old thing, and I'm like, well, that's two changes. I'm not gonna have two new things next
Yeah.
to it, so.
Well, if we were able to make a determination by next February, or, in 1 month, it still gives you at least 2 months to produce the sign and get it ready before you
Yeah.
open, so.
As long as Stratford Sign can do it.
Can I
I'm
ask,
in there, so we
Sure.
can put a rush on.
should we do the motion first, and then I have another question about this, so I don't know which one we're supposed to
I
do.
would continue discussion.
Yeah, I would
Okay,
continue
okay.
discussion, and we'll come back with all the other.
So
proposed
I'm
changes.
just wondering what proper swim attire is, because I did have a grandma this summer who came to me and said, I was so uncomfortable with the thongs at the pool, and I was like, well, I don't know, what's proper swim attire? Because she had a little boy that she thought was, the person
Yeah,
was
you brought
hardly.
that up last summer, and we didn't really talk about what style of swimsuit, but I guess by that, I specifically mean swimsuits and swimming trunk, like cotton and clothes, like if you'd wear a shirt into the pool, it messes with the chemicals and the filters and everything. So that's the importance of swim attire, not just a t-shirt and shorts. But
So I
as
guess-
far as the style of swim attire, I don't have a
So-
recommendation on that, but.
She was offended with the butt being showed, it was a thong, so they're running around with their butt. So I don't know, I'm just saying that it was offensive. I don't know if anyone else has opinions about that.
I know it's a slippery slope,
I would
having
say-
talked to many lawyers of what you consider acceptable or offensive clothing, smell, looks. It just so slippery of a slope that when we were doing the rules for here, we talked about, not having offensive smells, and he's like, that's too slippery of a slope, how can you, what's offensive to you? Wait, it's a First Amendment type speech, freedom of speech, so I can already know where this conversation's gonna go, it's just recommend not,
I wouldn't touch
not
I wouldn't touch it at all.
determining it, because now you're saying,
Well, what are you
is-
gonna do, have a
what is
tape measure
proper?
out there?
A
and
tape measure,
per
picture.
fabric ratio?
I,
I can put the material, of like what swimsuits are made out of, if that.
No,
but the proper was actually about like not wearing jeans and cowboy boots.
Okay.
And
Okay.
jumping in pool, it'd have to have like proper.
Sure.
Like a proper swim attire, like actually swim trunks or a swimsuit. Then you get into the end of like, what is, how short is short, or how to, not enough materials. So the idea was actually not have like your jacket and snowmobile suit on.
T-shirts.
Not the other way around, so that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, they were trying to chase something that probably may open up a bigger can of worms.
I was gonna say, they're gonna have retaliation.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And to who and where.
Really
and
what shows up
age
is-
and all of that stuff. It's-
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
okay. Any other, did anybody else have any thoughts on the other rules?
No.
Okay. Then, would any be, what was the motion we were coming up
I was
with?
gonna ask you.
Okay, how about that, I'll make a motion, that we direct Amanda to go back, or the parks to go back and visit with area swimming pools, regional swimming pools, and see what is their approach to weapons, and then come back with a recommendation by the next meeting and then modify it there. Because, or let us know if this has to go to the, if the recommendations, or if the other communities are banning them, then would that have to go to the full council?
We'll review that with legal counsel. When Amanda's doing her review, she'll bounce off
Okay.
the hat to see what he
And
says,
then,
and city administration.
then the plan would be to come back.
Mhm.
Okay,
February.
so I guess the motion would be to direct the parks to go back and do some research of regional and how that would tie to the city's rules. And make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, okay,
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks. Okay, good, that's number 7. Number 8, we're on to the reports. First one, back to you, Amanda.
Right, everything's kind of the same-ish, so the senior center, we still have activities going daily, weekly, still ADRC meal site, Monday through Friday. Winter programming, we canceled the January tennis session mainly due to low enrollment. There was a little scheduling conflict as well, but there weren't enough kids enrolled to run it anyway, so it kind of worked itself out. Adult volleyball is still ongoing. Some of the leagues will actually be ending right around our next meeting, which is rare, 'cause sometimes it goes into April. We have a lot of buys or whatever, but we had really good numbers this year. The next charcoal drawing is February, associated with Cabin Fever, the outdoor ice skating rinks, just waiting on ice. Indoor open skate, the next one is January 22nd, and then February 19th. The December ones, we had the 3 days after Christmas, and there was like probably double or triple the amount of people there than the last 2 years that I can remember. So that was really good numbers there. We were running a junior volleyball clinic. I know I upped it. I think I made it longer this year instead of just a week or two. But it's basically all of January, and as long as I've been here, it's been canceled pretty much for low enrollment, but this year they have 14, so that's good. And then Little Tyke soccer program inside. Last year we just did all the years was just February indoors, so I did February and March on Saturdays this year. That's all I got. Oh, and Band Hay. We talked about the rules. I'll reach out to the returning employees pretty soon. Last year's manager confirmed she'll work again this summer, but it will be her last, so that will be a very difficult replacement to make next year. I ran a lifeguard course at the end of the summer last year in hopes I wouldn't have to do one this year. Now I have 2 people interested, which I normally would be fine with, but I really need like 5 or 6 to run a good course, because you need victims and rescue 1 and rescue 2 to kind of make the scenarios go well. So I need at least a handful more, so if you know anybody that is interested in being a lifeguard, send them my way. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Moving on to events and programs. Nikki.
We have the ice rink, as Amanda said, and I think Ben will probably go through that with the maintenance operations, but we're just waiting on ice at this point. The one in the Wenzel Plaza is up, and we are adding lighting to that, and Ben's crew has been working hard on that. I'm excited to see it up. So we're adding also more decoration just to make the rink a little bit more intimate and appealing with the yellow casing on the side. It's just, you know, a rink. So hopefully that comes through when we actually can get ice. And then February, we are looking forward to the Cabin Fever events. I don't know if everyone saw, but Bozeman did have to cancel Snowfest because of our lack of snow, and ironically, it was canceled on the day we actually got snow, but they need at least, I think, between 6 to 8 inches of clean snow, and we just won't get that by then. So they decided to cancel it, and hopefully actually they already have a date for 2025. We do have the charcoal drying, which we do, I believe, monthly or every other month here, but we're actually making this one Cabin Fever themed to kick off in February, and then we had the luminary hikes the first weekend of February, and then the run the 17th. Because of Snowfest, we kind of backed away from doing a fest with that and just focusing on the run and then having activities for the runners afterward, something smaller, but we may still do something after the run with the fest just to kind of compensate for the lack of snow and not being able to have Snowfest. So.
Okay, any questions? Nope. Okay, thank you. Move on to item C, Parks, Forestry, Review. Ben.
Cody's just been kind of going through our equipment for athletic fields and fixing and repairing and building and all that fun stuff that's in the off season. One big project we did get done was we did a bunch of fence work around the softball fields at Mack Park. I got some photos in the back, kind of before and after pictures. In the parks, we're kind of just waiting for the cold weather for the ice rinks. Sounds like I'll probably have some guys start coming in this weekend. We'll probably be doing snow removal Saturday, but I'll probably have somebody come in Sunday to start putting water down. So hopefully we can have Pickle Pond open for next weekend. Usually takes about a week to get enough water down to get it skatable. And then we have the one at Wenzel and the one at the Show Palace as well. So forestry operations, we started in Brain Park this week, kind of in between the snowfalls here. But you can see the guys are working in there. They were in there this afternoon after we ran routes this morning. Probably be the same thing tomorrow. I think we're supposed to get a little bit of snow tonight, but you'll probably see guys in there tomorrow afternoon as well. We had 3 from the parks crew and 4 or 5 from the street crew partner together to get that work done. We basically got the month of January to get trees down, and then the month of February we advertise the wood and allow a couple of weeks for whoever wins the bid to get the wood out, so that way they're out of there by March before the ground gets soft again. So really you only got a window so long to cut. So if you see us not in there in February, that's the reason, because it just takes so much time to get the back part of it done. At the zoo, our weekend hours changed now. At the beginning of the year, we had money in the budget to keep it open until 2:30 on weekends instead of 11:30. So that's been a nice change. Rotary's done. They got a lot of stuff cleaned up with the no snow and the nice weather, so that's been great. My plow guys were super excited this week because they weren't running into lights and all that kind of stuff. So it was for that it was nice. I know people don't care because it looks nicer when it's snowing out for the lights, but for our maintenance guys it was nice. The Fox, they've been off and on exhibit. They got into a little scuffle, so they had some stitches and that kind of thing, so we had to keep them separated. But I think tomorrow they get reintroduced. So if you've been down there, you've only seen one fox. That's why. Did I miss anything? I think that's about it, unless anybody's got any questions.
So this is just big picture, and I'm not this is just like, have we thought about like long-term how to decrease salt on our trails, just to kind of preserve our concrete or asphalt, to let less salt into our wastewater? Have we, like, do we have any kind of plan to see if we can reduce it?
You know, no, I would say, but I don't think, we try not to put much down to start with. I know we've getting complaints about people slipping and falling, but we also get complaints that it's too much salt. You know, it's kind of a balance. We don't have a brine machine or anything for our sidewalks or trails. We try to plow and use our brooms as much as we can. Other than operationals, I don't know if there really is a good answer.
And we wouldn't be able to use like the beet juice because we don't have the machine to actually disperse it.
Yeah, we don't have one, no. I don't, possibly something we could look into, but.
Just something to think about, just to maintain them for longer.
Some communities do not plow or salt their trail system, asphalt or any type of trail system. They just let it
Is
go.
it more just for the cost of maintaining it or to reduce salt use?
I think it's just the cost of maintaining it, and then there's a wear on the blade itself, a wear on the asphalt itself, and then creating that ice condition and then adding salt. So there's an expense related to plowing. Some communities just choose not to plow or clear their trail system.
And we do have sections that we don't clear, like we don't clear the trails out at Hamas. Some of it's just logistics to get a piece of equipment that far across town. You know, there's a cost for all that, time and expense and wear and tear, so.
So I have one question, quick. Okay, so I think I've asked you this before. I know we plow Veterans Parkway. We plow that trail. Off of Veterans onto East 8th, do we plow that where Washington, it's between Veterans Parkway and Washington, or is that the responsibility? Yeah.
I believe there's a sidewalk there by, kind of like by 501.
Yeah.
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 I'm pretty sure the street department does
Okay.
that with their
Okay.
smaller sidewalk machine.
Okay, because I walk that in the morning and sometimes it's plowed and sometimes it's not. and
Yeah,
I
I'm pretty
didn't
sure
know
that's on the
whose
street department's route.
It's definitely street department.
Okay.
We would be all over that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right?
We had it done by 5 a.m.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Snow blowing for you.
Get to that on video, Dave. Yeah.
And shovel.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's city maintained,
Okay.
but I think that's the street, because they do the cross sections all, on every road coming down by the stop and go lights. I think they hit that and they go down to 29th. So they're in Hugh,
All right.
all those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right, any other questions for Ben? Oh, if not, Amy, we'll move on to cemetery.
Okay, there were 13 burials in December. Just gonna jump down to number 4. Columbarium bids were opened on Wednesday, December 20th. Cold Spring Granite was awarded the bid pending approval from the Board of Public Works and then Town Council. The new columbarium should be placed later this year, in the late fall, hopefully. Wreaths Across America placed Christmas wreaths in the 2 veteran fields on Saturday, December 16th. This says they'll be back on Sunday, January 14th to collect them, but they did collect them already last Sunday due to the forecasted weather, which was probably a good idea. And staff put the military branch flags out on both of the veteran fields for the weekend that they placed the wreaths per their request. And then I did have a little, a bit of highlight from the Wreaths Across America. This is from Tim Norland, who headed up the event this year. He said there were 218 registered volunteers for the laying of the wreaths on Sunday, December 16th. There were 60 sponsors of 544 wreaths, which were placed on veteran graves throughout the cemetery, with the majority of those placed in Flanders Field and Veterans Field of Honor. Of the 544 wreaths, 19 were grave-specific sponsors outside of those 2 veteran fields, and then those family members placed those wreaths. Let's see here. So, actually Sunday, January 7th, there were over 30 volunteers to help remove the wreaths. Each wreath was inspected to ensure that it was a Wreaths Across America wreath and counted before being placed on the trailer. He said it took less than 30 minutes to canvass the entire cemetery and collect those wreaths. Wreaths Across America Day in 2024 is Saturday, December 14th, based upon support from the community, volunteers, and organizations like the American Legion and VFW Auxiliary. Their goal for 2024 is to place a wreath on every veteran grave in Hillside Cemetery and surrounding cemeteries. He said they had already received several thousands of dollars in sponsorships for 2024. And then he also just wanted to say thank you for trusting him and Wreaths Across America so they could bring this incredible event to Hillside Cemetery. And that's all I have.
Very cool.
Yay.
Right, great. Right, last, Justin. Treasurer.
Working with Blake and Parkitecture on the final design and construction plans for the pickleball courts at Brain Park. We're hoping to go out to bid very soon, ideally, start construction as soon as weather allows, and then get them done as quickly as we can. As everyone knows, this is kind of a multi-phase project, so pickleball's first. We're hoping to do the softball fields in the fall, and then next year, I believe, is the playground, but don't quote me on that. But then next year will be the playground and so on and so forth. We'll have to make a determination on the playground whether how much longer it lasts. Is one of those things identified through the Corp evaluation that it's not in great shape and probably should strongly be considered maybe removing it. But we're going to see its condition in spring and then make a determination. So we might be a little bit of time without a playground, which will probably impact mostly the renters who maybe wanted to play on the playground during that time. We'll have to go to a different location if that's a focus of theirs. Been working with the Central Wisconsin State Fair Board of Directors as well as the Fairgrounds Commission on a new expo building at the fairgrounds. That'll be wrapped up sometime in the spring. I'll present all that information to you later on. We're looking at putting about a 30,000 square foot exposition building in the fairgrounds, primarily to help the fair address some of the older dilapidated buildings, replace it with the newer building, and then give them an additional revenue source, and then hopefully attract events, tourism, shows, and parties, whatever you want to do at the place, at their new building. So that's something we'll do later on this spring. Also been working with the committee about relocating the Jurassic Park sculptures to Wildwood. We have one more committee meeting, and then I think hopefully a final presentation in the next few months. There's no rush on that. It's not like it's going to happen this year or even next year. It's whenever Clyde and Nancy decide to make that move. That might be this year. It might be in 10 years. It's up to them when they want to make that move. But we're just preparing for that decision to happen. Working with Bose & Company on the final construction and design documents for Wenzel restrooms. They'll be also built this year. So we're going to have a busy construction year this year between Brain Park Pickleball, the softball fields, and the Wenzel restrooms going in. So it'll be a busy construction season. And plus Ben has always got his staff busy fixing and repairing and improving a number of facilities in our park system. And that's all I got.
Good, good. Any questions for Justin? If not, with no objections, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Cute.
Thanks. Next meeting, yep, okay. I'm adjourned, we're back in. All right, you got something? What do you got?
That's in the minutes.
Out, in, out.
Yeah, reconvene.
Okay, sorry.
False alarm. Go ahead.
So I've been kind of trying to communicate with Friends of the Trail and with Parks and Rec to see if maybe they'd be willing to come and do a presentation with us, to us, about what their plans are, what they hope to be doing, and see if we can kind of work together. So I just wanted to say that it would be great if that's a future agenda item, if they could come and do a presentation, and then on the agenda have us discuss if there's something where we both said, hey, yeah, we could both work together on whatever this happens to be. So that was just
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, we do communicate with Friends of the Trails on a regular basis, whether it's a simple cleanup of one of the trails or whether it's large improvements. So we do work closely with them. So whenever we start I guess, discussions on possible trail projects, we reach out to the Friends of the Trails and let them know and have discussions. So we do meet regularly, but if you want that group to come here to, I guess, talk about stuff, then definitely. we
I
can
think it
arrange
would just be nice to hear what their hopes are and dreams are, and just, what are they working towards?
Yeah. I have a meeting with Brian Parker, who's one of the members of the Friends of the Trails, on Monday to have him potentially come either in February or March.
Okay, good. All right. I guess I forgot to mention the next, you're so good. The next meeting is Valentine's Day, so get ready.
So bring your date.
Bring your date. All right. Now, hearing no further, anything else? Okay, meeting's adjourned.